Y'all are crazy. What's up, Oaks Youth? Y'all doing good tonight? Yeah? Yeah, let's go. I'm super nervous tonight. This thing's crazy. It's crazy being up here. What it feels like right now is it's like, have you ever been to a music party with your friends and you're all like walking up to this giant ride that you think looks awesome and scary, and you're like, yo, let's ride that one. They're like, okay, cool, let's do it. And you walk up and you get in line, you go through all the little things, right? And it's like ridiculous how long it is. And then you get behind the people and you start moving up. People start filling up behind you. And then you look up at the ride and you're like, oh my God, what did we sign up for? But there's too many people in the back for you to back out, and you're stuck in there and you just got to ride it. That's what it feels like. When Andrew told me I was to speak, I was like, dude, this is the coolest thing ever. And now like an hour before, I'm like, oh my God, what did I sign up for? What are they doing having me up here? But yeah, my name is Ethan. What's up, y'all? If you haven't met me, I'm an intern here at Oaks Youth. I do the social medias and some creative stuff too. So, yeah, I'm the guy y'all were all yelling at who didn't post the camp teams on time. That was me. Sorry about that. Hopefully y'all graceful. So I actually started coming here as a senior in high school, which is super crazy. So I actually sat in the seats that y'all are sitting in as a student, so I understand what it's like to try and live for Jesus as a high schooler. I understand what it's like to mess up living for Jesus as a high schooler. So I get what you're doing. Graduated from Midlothian High School, so I know a lot of y'all's teachers. It's weird sometimes, but yeah. And I also just wanted to let you know before we get started that I believe in you. I believe in you a lot. I believe in the Lord, and I believe in this place, and I believe in you. I believe in what God can do in you, and I believe in what God can do through you. And I know that statement is hard, and some of y'all think there's no way that God can use me. You don't know what I've done. And I want you to know if God can use me and if God can use the other people in this room, He 100% can use you. And there's nothing that's going to stop God from using you. So I just want to let you know that if you don't have anyone else in your life believing in you, I 100% believe in you, and so does God. So I'm about to ask you guys a couple questions, if that's okay. But before we do, a little disclaimer. When you answer these questions, these aren't going to be answers that are necessarily right, and they're not going to be answers that are correct. I want you to be vulnerable, and I want you to be like honest and real with yourselves. The thing I always say in small groups is I want true answers, not right answers. All right? So I'm about to ask some questions. I want you to be real, be vulnerable with the answers. So I want everyone to close their eyes, bow your head so there's no looking around, so that way no one sees what you do. And if this statement relates to you in any way, I want you to raise your hand and just keep it up until I say put it down. Sound good? Yeah? Cool. All right, raise your hand if this is a statement that you relate to in any way. I struggled or am currently struggling with feeling the presence of God. Raise your hand. Don't look around. Put your hand up in the air. Keep it up. Keep it up. I'll give like 2 more seconds for anybody. Just know that there's no condemnation. There's nothing wrong with feeling this. I have my hand in the air right now. So if you feel uncomfortable, know that I have it up too. All right, keep your hand up. I want everyone to open their eyes and look around. Put your hand up high. Don't be ashamed of it. It's totally okay. No worries at all. The reason why I'm doing this, I know you're like, but Ethan, you said you weren't going to make us see it. I want you to see that you're not alone in this thing. And I want you to see that it is okay to not be this perfect church kid that we feel like we have to be. It's okay to not be where we think we should be at. All right, you can put your hands down. All right, next question, and this is the last one, so then y'all can just go back to listening. Raise your hand if this relates to you. I feel like I can only get so far, and then I hit this wall that stops me from feeling the Lord in the way that I feel like I should. I know I should be over here, but every time I go to approach the Lord, I just hit this wall. And I know I should be over there, but I can't get there because of this wall. Raise your hand if you feel like that's you. If you ever feel that, if that like relates to you. Yeah? Cool. I'm pumped that y'all are raising y'all's hands. This is awesome and incredible because this is what we're talking about tonight. We are talking about how the Lord loves you no matter what. and how even though you feel this way, you are not disqualified. You deserve his love. There is no way that you do not deserve his love. And we're going to talk about why that is. We're going to talk about how that is. We're going to talk about how God loves us, even though we're saying yes to this. And y'all can put y'all's hands down. I don't know why I had them up so long. That's weird. Y'all have questions or something? That's odd. So that's what we're talking about tonight. We're talking about, what does the Bible say when I'm not correct? What does the Bible say when I'm not living like a perfect church person? What's the Bible say when I'm getting things wrong, when I'm messing up, when I'm falling short, when I say I'm a Christian, I'm saying I'm going to live this pure life, but then I'm over here doing this, looking at this, hanging out with this person, doing these things with this person. What does the Bible say about that when I screw up? What does the Bible say about when I go to church every Wednesday and Sunday, and I go to every single small group, and I'm leading worship, but what nobody knows about is that I haven't heard from God in like 2 months, or that I haven't like felt God's presence in 3 months? What does the Bible say about those things when I feel like I don't even feel qualified to do what the Lord's called me to do? That's what we're talking about tonight. So if that relates to anybody in the room, you're at the right spot. Yeah, cool. Yeah, so I know we're going to get a little heavy, and I can talk fast sometimes. I'm trying to slow down, guys. I'm sorry. I just get excited about things, and I get going, and then I'll stop breathing while I'm talking, then veins will start popping out of my neck and my head and stuff. So y'all can say, yeah, come on, and all that sort of stuff, but you can also say, like, whoa, slow down, all that sort of stuff, too, because I can talk real fast. But if y'all are able to listen to Brand Cormier, then y'all can listen to me. I ain't going to sing, so don't worry about that. I might, though, but I'm not going to. Nah, I ain't gonna do it. You don't want that. You don't want none of that, Rowdy. Yeah. Cool. So, yeah, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about how you're not disqualified when you feel like you should be. We're talking about what the Lord says about that when you feel like you should be disqualified, when you don't deserve the Lord's love, and all that sort of stuff. We're talking about how the Lord actually does love you. So we're gonna start off in something in Exodus, but before we jump into the verse, we are gonna talk about a few things that the Bible talks about in the Old Testament about how God operated in the Bible. We're going to talk about his formula for worship, his formula for coming to him, for being in his presence, and for like doing life with him. We're going to talk about how the Old Testament did that and how the Lord worked in that way in the Old Testament. And the reason why we're looking at all these different things and these formulas of worship is because it's not just an Old Testament thing. Sometimes we feel like God in the Old Testament is a different God in the New Testament, right? Actually, what we're going to look at is like the formula he uses in the Old Testament. It's actually the exact same one in the New Testament, but it's different, and it's the exact same way that he's working today, and it's the exact way that he qualifies you despite your mistakes too. So, if y'all want to throw that picture up on the screen, yeah, that's real cool. So this little square box looking thing, this whole thing was called the Tabernacle. And I know y'all heard that name before because we hung out at camp there and played some amoeba, and Ashton Houston kicked some butt. Where's she at, Ashton Houston? Yes, ma'am. Way to go. You carry that team on your back. Red Raiders for life. 9th place, Caitlin. Yes, ma'am. Let's go. So that right there, that's the Tabernacle. So first, we're gonna talk about that little blue part right there. So y'all see that blue part? Say, yeah, I see the blue part, Ethan. Cool. Yeah, so that blue part is actually where they brought their offerings and their sacrifices to worship God and to make themselves ceremonially clean for God. So what they would do is whenever they would sin or whenever they would mess up, they became ceremonially unclean. And the way that they became clean again or pure again is they would take an animal, they would take an offering to burn, and they would bring it there, and this animal was one that was pure, didn't have any problems or nothing like that. They would take it there, they would kill it, and then they would burn that offering on that little blue thing. That's why there's fire on it, and the aroma that rose to heaven would please God, and he would forgive them of their sins because that offering, that pure offering, took the place of their impure debt that they owed the Lord. Does that make sense to y'all? Yeah? So when they were impure, they owed a debt to God, and that debt was death. But then they took this animal, and that animal took their spot, and now they're good. They're made clean again because that sacrifice took their place. So that's what that little blue part is, and that is how they worshiped and were made clean in the Old Testament. And then, if y'all want to look at that little that box to the left of it, that's got the green and the reds and all that stuff like Christmas. That first room that doesn't have any color, it's called the holy place. That is where priests would go in. They would burn incense and they would worship God and stuff like that. That little green part, that is the curtain, or also known as the veil. So when you hear like all the Christmas songs that are like, the veil is torn and all that stuff, you know what I'm talking about? That's the veil. You can get that picture back up. That's the veil that it's talking about that was torn, is that thing. But then in the red room, that is where the Ark of the Tabernacle is at. Y'all know heard of the Ark before, right? Yeah? Cool. Yeah, so the Ark in the Old Testament, the Ark was the representation of the presence of God. So they would take the ark when they went to go fight, and that would mean that the presence of God was with them, and they would win the battle. And so that's where they kept the ark. And the cool thing about that is not a single person, except for one man, not a single person is allowed into that room and allowed to see the Ark of the Covenant, except for one guy, and that guy was the high priest, and he was only allowed in that room once a year too. And the high priest's responsibility was that he would go in there and he would worship God on behalf of himself and on behalf of the whole Israelite people. And that's like thousands of people. It's 12 tribes with thousands of people in each tribe. And so he was a representation of the whole nation of Israel. He would go in there and he would worship God on their behalf. And the high priest was somebody who was handpicked by God out of every single person on the nation. They chose one person, and he was the high priest until the day he died. And then when he died, one other person was picked until their death, and so on and so on. And so it was a really, really, really honorable thing to be the high priest. It was a high responsibility, and it was a heavy weight, a heavy burden to carry, because it was you were carrying the nation on your back for the Lord. And once a year, you go in there and you would worship for the whole nation. So it was a really big responsibility to be the high priest. And we're actually going to be talking about a high priest in the Bible. This man's name is Aaron. Everyone say Aaron. It's actually pronounced Aaron. I'm just kidding. It ain't that. It's just Aaron. Aaron was a high priest. Aaron was also Moses' brother. Y'all know Moses, right? Yeah. The big guy with the stick who made water move away. Yeah, that guy. That was his brother Aaron. Andrew liked that joke. I love it. Aaron was his brother. Aaron was picked by God to be the high priest. So he's the guy who's representing the whole nation of Israel to God. He's supposed to lead them in worship, lead them in everything spiritual and everything with the Lord. That's his responsibility. So it's a really cool thing that he's getting to do that. And so we're about to read a story about Aaron, and we're about to read a story about how Aaron messes it all up and does something he's not supposed to do at all. All right? Does that sound good? Y'all ready to read this tea about Aaron? God, I hate that saying. That is the worst thing that y'all have ever come up with, is spill the tea, sis. Gosh. Literally, every time, where's Gabby? Every time she says, spill the tea, oh my goodness. Sorry, Gabby. Y'all give it up for Gabby. She's the best. Yeah. Cool. Now I only got 17 minutes. They made that timer really big. Y'all look back there. They made that timer really big because I go really long. And I've already blown through half of it, I think. So I got to pick it up. I'm going to stop talking to y'all so much, and I'm just going to read this. All right, Exodus 32, 1 through 6. We're going to read this thing. Sound good? Y'all can pull up on the cell phones, or y'all can read it on the screens up there. Exodus 32, 1 through 6. Right now what's happening, Moses and Joshua is his disciple. Moses and Joshua, they're up in the mountain. They are talking to God. All right, so they're having conversation with God. God is giving them something. He's giving them leadership. He's giving them something to bring back down to the Israelite people so the Israelites know what to do next. This is what happens all throughout the time that the Israelite people are in the desert, is Moses would go up with God, meet with him, get a command from God, get direction from God. Moses would go back down, and he would direct the people. So that's what's happening right now with Moses, and that's what they're at in the part of this story, is they're up in the mountain talking with God. And right now, Aaron, he is down with Israelite people, hanging out downstairs with all of them. I don't know why I said downstairs. Hanging out with all of them, chilling with the Israelites, and they're just waiting for Moses to come back so they know what to do next. So that's the Israelites, is they wait for God to tell them what to do, and they go do it. But as that's like how we're supposed to live. And if you know something, we're not very good at it. So Exodus 32, 1-6, it says, when the people saw that Moses was taking so long in coming down from the mountain, they gathered around Aaron and said, come make us gods who will go before us. As for this fellow Moses who brought us up out of Egypt, we don't know what's happened to him. And Aaron answered them. He said, take off all the gold earrings that your wives and your sons and your daughters are wearing and bring them to me. So all the people took all the gold that they had in their houses and in their huts and on their ears and around their necks and wherever else they kept gold. They took all that gold and they brought it to Aaron. And what Aaron did is he gathered it all up. He took what they handed him. He made it into an idol, a false god, and cast it into the shape of a golden calf. Then they said, these are your gods. This golden calf is your God, Israel, who brought you out of Egypt. And when Aaron saw this, he built an altar in front of this gold calf and announced, tomorrow there'll be a festival to the Lord. So the next day the people rose early, and they sacrificed burnt offerings and presented fellowship offerings to this golden calf. And then they sat down and ate and drank and indulged in revelry towards this golden calf. They celebrated him, they feasted, and they worshiped this golden calf that they had just made. This is Aaron, the high priest. Remember when we talked about high priest? Represents the whole nation of Israel to God and for God. The guy who gets to go into the holiest of holies, where the Ark of the Tabernacle, where the presence of God is at. He gets that responsibility. And over here, as soon as people start complaining, he's making a false god. He is crafting a false god out of gold and saying, this golden calf right here that you just watched me made brought you out of Israel. Not the Lord, not the one I'm supposed to be serving, this golden calf. That's what the high priest just did, right? Y'all understand why that's a big deal, right? Say yeah if you do. Say no if you don't. We'll talk after service. So that's what he did. So Aaron, in no way, as a high priest, deserves the role of high priest. He in no way deserves the responsibility of being a high priest. No way deserves the ability to minister to the Lord in the presence of God. He no way deserves these things because he's disrespecting God and he's turning away from God and he's not loving God the way that he should be by denying all these idols and all these false things. He's actually building false idols. Why in the world would he deserve these things? He doesn't deserve it. He doesn't deserve the honor of high priest. And we feel this way too when we're trying to follow Jesus. Is that we don't deserve it. When we mess up, we're like, oh gosh, I don't deserve this thing anymore. I don't deserve grace anymore. I've screwed up. I'm too messy. I'm too dirty. You don't know what I've done. I don't deserve grace anymore, right? Who's ever felt that way? In worship, you're like, I see everyone else raising their hands. I see people crying. I feel nothing. I don't deserve anything. I'm too messed up and too dirty to feel anything. Right? That's how we get to feeling. And this is what we do. When we feel like this, we're like, I just gotta do it. I gotta worship harder. I gotta pray harder. I gotta get better at loving Jesus more, and I gotta look like that person when they worship and pray like that person prays when they pray. I gotta do these things better. I gotta work and I gotta fight to make myself right with God, right? We get mixed up in this little mental trap where we're like, I have to earn my grace. Does that sound right? Earn your grace? That's what we get to thinking. Is this grace thing is something that we have to earn, that we have to fight for, and that we have to work for. It's the same way that in the Old Testament they would worship this way. When they would mess up, right? We talked about it. When they would mess up, they'd have to go out and work for money to buy this thing, buy this animal to go kill, so that way they would be right with God again. And as soon as they sinned again, they had to go do the exact same thing over and over and over and over and over until the day they died. They worked for grace. They worked for forgiveness of their sins. It doesn't sound right, does it? But it's how we feel. We feel like we have to work and earn our grace. And that's not true. So we get caught in this little lie, this way of thinking about God. And the lie is that God is our boss and we're his employees. And when we get to thinking and living like this, the things that get stuck in our head is that if God's our boss and we're his employee, if we're not working properly, we could get fired, we could get a write-up, and if we get too many write-ups, we're going to get fired. By the end of the year, when we do a performance review, is our performance review with God going to earn us a promotion, or are we going to get demoted, right? We get in this mindset where we have to work for God. And if we're not working right enough for God, it messes us up. And then when we're like, oh gosh, I'm not working good enough for God, I'm not going to get the mercy or the grace that this person is getting because they're working better than me and they're more successful than me in working for God, right? We start to work for God. And that's not who he is. He's not our boss. He's our Father. And you are his son and daughter. You're not his employee. And a father doesn't make you earn something. A father gives you something when you ask for it. And a good father, the good father of the Bible, he's not going to give you anything to hurt you. When a son or a daughter comes to him hurting and broken, he's not going to say, why'd you do that? You're an idiot. Suck it up. No, he's going to say, come here. Let me see what's wrong. Oh, you skinned your knee. You hurt yourself. You sinned. I'm so sorry. Come here. Let me hug you. Let me help you with this thing. All right, now go and play again. Go and serve me again. Go do this thing. That's what a father looks like, and that's what you as a son and daughter need to approach the Lord in that way. That's what he wants you to do. God's a father that loves his sons and daughters, and he's in the business of using broken people who don't deserve it. Y'all know David from the Bible? David and Goliath? Yeah. His father disqualified him before he even had a chance to even show up. The prophet came looking for a king to David's father and said, hey, bring all your sons. I want to anoint one of them as a king. And the father said, okay, here's all my sons. And the prophet said, the Lord didn't say any of these guys are kings. Do you have another one? And the father was like, yeah, we got this one guy, but I mean, you don't want him. His own son. He said that about him. And David went on to be king and served the Lord faithfully. Man after God's own heart was his name. Moses. Y'all know that guy? Stick guy, water guy? Yeah. Moses. When God called him to lead the people, Moses literally tried to say, no, don't use me. I'm not good enough. Use this guy. I can't talk well enough. I'm not going to be able to lead people. Use this guy. He already disqualified himself before he even tried to do what God called him to do. Aaron messed up and should have been kicked out of being a high priest. The Lord used him as a high priest till the day that he died. Elijah, where are you at? Yo, what's up, man? Elijah, after calling fire down from heaven by just praying a prayer of, God, I love you, send fire down from heaven. And fire fell from heaven. I just prayed that prayer and fire didn't fall from heaven. Elijah prayed that and fire literally fell from heaven. And then right after that, he said, Father, bring rain. After a 3-year drought, it rained on the spot. After doing those two things, he's like, I want to quit and die. Life's too hard. Lord, let me die. I'm done. It's funny, laughing, but you have friends that feel that way when they get home from school because their family is a wreck and their parents are divorcing and fighting and they feel like it's their fault and they want to quit and die. Sorry, that got real deep. I love y'all. We're having fun, guys. Don't worry. I love you. Jonah. Y'all know Jonah, right? VeggieTales, one of the best. Yes, sir. Yeah, Jonah. God said, hey, go over here and tell them my word. Tell them who I am. And Jonah said, nope. It went that way. God still used him. A heart that said no to God, I'm going the opposite direction. God said, no, I'm still going to use you. Because I'm not looking for someone perfect. I'm looking for someone who's willing to be used by me. Right? He's not looking for perfect. I want you to know that he's not looking for perfect at all. God is not looking for perfect. So why are we trying to be perfect? Why? Why are we trying to be perfect if God isn't looking for perfect? Why I think we struggle so much with his presence and we struggle so much with love and with feeling is we're trying to make ourselves good enough. We're trying real hard to make ourselves good enough to be loved by God. I want you to know that the Lord loves you no matter what. It's backwards New Testament, New Covenant thinking. And I know those are churchy words, but it's backwards thinking. We're still thinking like the Old Testament where when we mess up, we got to run and we got to bring an offering to make us right again. No, it's not anymore. New Testament, we're good. This isn't how you get right with God isn't by working for it. So how do you do it? Hebrews 8, 1 through 6. I'm just going to read this. and then we'll be done in a little bit. If y'all wanna put Hebrews 8, 1-6 on the screen. Yes, that's awesome. Here's the main point. We have a high priest who sat down in the place of honor beside the throne of God in heaven, and there he ministers in the heavenly tabernacle, just like we talked about earlier. The true place of worship that was built by the Lord and not by human hands. And since every high priest is required to offer gifts and sacrifices, our high priest makes an offering too. And if he were here on earth, he would not even be a priest, since there are already priests who offer the gifts required by the law. They serve in a system of worship that is only a copy, a shadow of the real one in heaven. When it says worship, it's talking about the thing with the animals, when they would go and they would burn them to make themselves right with God. That's what it means when it says worship. For when Moses was getting ready to build the tabernacle, God gave him this warning: be sure that you make everything according to the pattern I've shown you here on the mountain. But now Jesus, our high priest, Jesus is our high priest, has been given a ministry that's far superior to the old priesthood, the old way, the old covenant. For he is the one who mediates for us a far better covenant with God based on better promises. So how do we get right with God once we've screwed up? When we feel like we got to work for this thing back, when we feel like we got to bring a sacrifice to the altar to make us right again, how do we make this thing right? It's Jesus, our high priest, our intercessor. He is our mediator. Jesus is our high priest, and Jesus is our sacrifice. When we feel like we got to work to make something right and we got to bring the sacrifice to the altar to make ourselves right, that's not it anymore. Jesus already did it when he brought himself as a pure and perfect sacrifice to the cross. And he died there for us. That was all the sacrifice that we need in this room. It was a one and done job. That was it. Oh, you just sinned right after you walked out of this room? Jesus covered it. Oh, you just sinned right before you walked in this room? Jesus covered it. Oh, you sinning right now? Jesus covers it. One and done deal. So that's how we do it. Jesus is our high priest and he's our sacrifice. So why are we trying to fix ourselves? Jesus has already done it. I want to show you this thing, and it's something I learned in a reading psychology book for a psychology class, and it's this theory of belief versus behavior. And the band can come up while we talk about this thing. Belief versus behavior. See, tension happens when your belief, this is what you believe, why you do what you do, who you believe you are. When your belief goes one way and your behavior, what you do, goes another way, there's a tension that happens. And this tension is called being incongruent. When your belief and behavior are going in the same direction, it's congruent. When it's going opposite, it's incongruent. And this guy, Carl Rogers, he's the one that came up with this theory. He's a world-renowned counselor in the 80s. And he said, being out of congruence, so belief one way, behavior the other, is the primary cause of suffering. Incongruence between who you are and who you want to be causes anxiety, depression, and other forms of psychic distress. That's why I feel like my generation and y'all's generation is so constantly and consistently plagued with these issues of depression and anxiety and insecurity. These are things, right, that we hear about all the time, right? We deal with all the time. We feel all the time. And it's because we're trying to go this way. We want to go this way to be accepted, but we have a belief system that says, no, we need to go this way. But we're like, but it's so cool over here. It's so much easier over here. It's so much more fun over here. I'm going to be so much more accepted if I do this, or I look like this, or I talk like this, or act like this. But your belief is like, no, the Lord wants you over here to walk this way. And there's this gap and this tension that causes you to feel like, oh my gosh, something's wrong. I don't know what it is. I don't feel satisfied over here, but I don't know if I'll be accepted over here. And so I'm just trying to play both of them at the same time. And so my Sunday and Wednesday look one way, but then every other day of the week looks a different way. But then you feel by the time the week's done, you're like, oh my gosh, am I missing something? What's happening? I'm doing really good on Wednesdays, but my Saturday looks real different. And then you're sitting in your room alone, and you're like, why am I not happy with myself right now? Why don't I feel satisfied with who I am? Why don't I feel like I'm good enough to just be me? And it's because there's this gap. And there's this tension. Is you want to go this way, and you believe you're this person, and the Lord has spoken things over you that have taken root in your heart, and you know you are a son and daughter. You know you're a child of God, and you know you're covered by grace, but then you act this way, and you're like, this is confusing to me in my heart, and it messes you up. And it's what this is. It's called incongruence. So when behavior leads, when your behavior, what you do, leads your identity, and you fail, right? So when you're walking via behavior, and behavior is leading your identity, and you mess up, so you're walking in faith and behavior, and you mess up, then your belief then is you're a failure, right? But if you're walking in your belief, and you're walking in the belief that you are a son saved by grace or a daughter saved by grace, and you fail, what do you believe? That you're a son and daughter saved by grace. Does that make sense? When your behavior leads your identity and you fail, then you are a failure. But when your belief in who the loving Father is and who you are in Him is that you are a son and daughter saved by grace, and you fail, who do you believe you are? Say it. Son and daughter saved by grace, right? So when we're led by our behavior, it causes us to work for grace. It causes us to work for acceptance, and it causes us to believe that we are disqualified from the love of the Father, and we're disqualified from grace, and we're disqualified by the calling He's given us. But when we believe our worth, our value, and our qualification isn't in our behavior, it's in our Father. When we believe that and we walk in that, we can fail and keep going. We can fail and know that we are loved. We can fail and know that we are qualified. We can fail and know that we are accepted. And I know that there's people in this room, I feel it too, all the time I have to watch my heart from getting in this trap. I feel it too when I mess up and I'm looking at all the broken pieces on the ground of how I've messed up. I'm like, that's me, a broken mess. And I always have to look to the Lord and have Him remind me, no, you are not your failures. You are my son. Believe that. And get up and walk again in my grace, not in your strength, but in my strength. So, how do we not work for our grace but receive it? Is Jesus. He's the thing that gives us that grace to when we're looking at the broken mess on the ground and we're like, that's me. The grace that comes and says, no, it's not. You're not your failures. You're actually my son. That's Jesus. Jesus makes that possible. Jesus is how you receive that and how you feel that. So, some of you right now in the room, you've never accepted a Jesus, and you feel you relate to this thing of like, I'm walking in my behavior and I mess up and I screw up and it's all broken mess on the ground, and I'm like, that's me. And it just stays that way. It stays that you are this broken mess. There's no affirmation, there's no love, and you feel like, I don't know what to do with this mess. I've been trying for so long to fix this thing. I've been trying for so long to make myself feel right, make myself feel whole. And it's confusing because every time I try something new that should work, it ends up not working. It may work for a little while, but then it breaks again. You're like, why in the world is this happening? I want you to know that Jesus is in heaven, and He's looking down with you. He's looking down at your heart. He's looking down at who you are. And He doesn't see the broken mess. He sees someone who is perfect and who He wants to love. No matter how bad the mess is in your life and your heart, He sees somebody who He wants to love. And the cool thing is, the way to get that is just two things. You just got to believe in your heart, and you just confess with your tongue. It's something I talk about all the time with people when they're like, there's no way God can love me. And I'm like, yeah, there is. And He's like, there's no way God can forgive me. And I'm like, yeah, there is. And I'll ask them this question: how'd you get saved? Do you believe you're saved? They're like, yeah. And I'm like, how'd you get saved? And they're like, well, I prayed a prayer and I believed in Him. And I'm like, exactly. All it takes is two things: believe in your heart and confess with your tongue, regardless of what's going on around those two things, if you can get those two things right, which, let me tell you, they're really easy. He made it really easy for us. If you can get those two things, then you're good. Then you accepted Jesus and you are forgiven. And now that broken mess on the ground, the Lord is going to come and he's going to put all of that together. And you are now a son and daughter who's saved by grace and who's forgiven by grace. Every time you mess up, he's forgiven by grace. So, if you've never done that before, we're about to take a moment where we invite you to take that step. And so if that's something that the Lord's been working on your heart, where you're thinking in your head, I feel like this broken mess, and I've been trying to put this thing together for so long, and nothing's worked. I want to let you know that Jesus works. Jesus can put that together, and he's going to put it together with love and with grace, and you're not going to have to perform for it. You're not going to have to fight for it. He's going to do it for you. So if you've never done that, I'm going to give you the opportunity to do that. And the Lord is just speaking this to me. I feel like there's people in this room who just need a fresh start, and that's the fresh start you need. And it's not weird. I've had moments where I've had to be like, God, I'm sorry. I just need to recommit to you, and this is me saying, everything that you want me to do, I'm going to do. And so if you just need a fresh start, if you've said this prayer before, if you've done this thing before, but you need to start over, there's no shame in that. There's no condemnation in that. And there's no like, oh my gosh, look, he's up there again. There's none of that. There's only celebration, there's only joy, and there's only love in this room. So I'm going to ask you all to close y'all's eyes and bow your heads. And if you feel even just an ounce of it in your heart, if you feel like this is a decision that I want to make, that I want to step out and do, and I want to give my life to the Lord, give my life to Jesus, whether for the first time or you need to just recommit and start fresh, start new for you. I want to let you know this is a safe place that you can do that. So on the count of 3, if that's any of you, I just want you to raise your hand.